Welcome back to K-Nation. With football season just a few weeks away, no better guest to bring in than the voice of the Wildcats.
Hard to think of anyone better. Starting year 22, voice of Wildcats Wyatt Thompson. Wyatt, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, man. Good to be with you guys again. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So, such a crazy year in K-State sports last year, both football and men's basketball really exploding. Selfishly, being here for 2 decades, how much fun was it to cover these teams?
You know what? We've had a lot of good years, but last year was very special. When you do what K-State accomplished and win the Big 12 in football, and the team they beat, the way they did it, you know, the goal line stand, all of those kind of things, it was one for the ages, honestly. It's one of the best college football games I've ever had the pleasure of broadcast.
Right.
And then the basketball was something just because I think everybody knew we got a good man in Jerome Tang and a good guy and a basketball coach. But let's be honest, nobody saw Elite Eight and 26 wins coming. And to have that kind of run and to see Marquise and Keontae do what they did, and that staff, frankly, putting those guys together and having the success that early, totally special.
Yeah.
A heck of a year.
An exciting time for Wildcat sports as a whole, and you even have anticipation for women's basketball going into next year. All sorts of fun stuff. Let's talk about football specifically. I think that's what most people are talking about right now.
Sure.
Will Howard seems to me like he's a different guy mentally and with confidence. This is the first time he's entered the year as the starter. He was the starter at the end of the year last year, but this is the first time he's been the starter in August.
And I would believe, Glenn, maybe the best quarterback in the league. You could make an argument, certainly, but in the back half of the conference season, I believe he was the best quarterback in the league. And that says a lot. I mean, especially when you think about Max Duggan, you think about Jalen Daniels and some of those types of guys. He's really a very unique individual, has really improved a lot. And I think leadership skills is a big deal. I think Coach Kleiman loves him. He says all the time he wants this to be a players program, and Will's kind of right near the top of the list, actually.
It's cool to see Will Howard, you know, get that shine from the start, but we're kind of talking before we started here, you lose Deuce and you lose Malik. What kind of weapons is Will going to have to give the ball off to?
Well, it's a perfect question, isn't it? Because you don't really replace Deuce, right? You just kind of move on. It's kind of like replacing Darren Sproles or Jordy Nelson or somebody like that. But K-State's done it before, and I think they'll do it again. To answer the question, I think you're going to love Trayshawn Ward, the transfer from Florida State. And I think you saw enough about DJ Giddens last year to know that he's strong, and he got almost 600 yards rushing last year in very limited opportunities, honestly. He also catches the ball. He's just become a really good player. And then I think if a lot of people will question, you know, trying to replace Malik, who's going to be the guy or guys? You know, what I say to everybody is, look, when you say receivers, you have to count everybody. That includes tight end. That means Ben Sinnott, who's one of the very best in the league and probably a guy who may play at the next level. He's really, really good. But they need Keegan Johnson to have a good year, and I think R.J. Garcia, who we saw in the championship game, make that catch. There are some guys there. I think they'll be fine there.
Let's talk defense real quick. They lose 3 defensive backs that all go pro. That means they had 3 good defensive backs. How do you fill those spots? They got good talent behind them, but they got guys who haven't played a lot of snaps there.
Well, they do, but I think in all honesty, there are some guys there that have played more football than perception may be. And that means like a Jacob Parrish, a VJ Payne. Those types of guys got their feet wet last year. And again, they weren't like everyday guys, but and you're right, losing 3 pros is most difficult. But I love the guys that coach those fellas, and I think they're going to be fine. And, you know, up front, they're going to have a couple of guys replace a Felix Anudike-Uzama, who was awesome, and Eli Huggins, who was also fantastic. So there are some holes and some questions, but I don't know that the holes are as big as everybody wants to think they are. We've got some good football players at K-State.
I got one last one for you. You were here in Topeka for the Catbackers event. Chris Kleiman says, I know where I'm ending my career, and it's Kansas State. How much should Wildcat fans be fired up about that?
You know what? I was grinning as big as everybody on that when he said that, and I was a little surprised he said it, to be honest with you, but we're so fortunate at K-State. We talked about last year. One thing that's great right now is leadership starts at the top, right, and with Gene Taylor. But when you have a Chris Kleiman and his coordinators and then Jerome Tang and that kind of staff, we feel very fortunate to have all of those people at Kansas State, honestly.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
guys.
we
Good being
appreciate
with you.
it, man.
Thank
We'll
you
see
so
you out
much.
at the Bill.
You got it. Sounds good.
All
Go
right.
Cats.
More K-Nation after the break. Don't go anywhere.